Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by SoundCloud Studios and brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson's The Missing, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. We're here with a terrific gentleman who's a board-certified internal medicine specialist, and he has been recognized as a visiting scientist at numerous sports and medicine and neurological institutes and around the country. You might have seen him at games too, and you might want to take note on that. He's a creator of a Q collar, which is proved to reduce incidents of traumatic brain injury, most commonly around the NFL. We hope to see some as well too. And basically, it's combating sports combat, and also used in major sports, of course, the NFL and more. He also pioneers the slosh theory, explaining nature's highly G-tolerant creatures, head ramming incidents, including woodpeckers, giraffes, rams, and everything else, not the LA version, of course. And his new book called When Heads Come Together shines a light on the journey to overcome the various scientific mysteries, which include TBI, or traumatic brain injury. We'll be calling TBI throughout the program, so we'll have it ingrained in your head. You don't get knocked over here. So traumatic brain injury, best known as TBI, saving contact sports and saving the brains of combat fighting. And live, ladies and gentlemen, from the Plus Studios in beautiful downtown Tampa, Florida. He's always on the go, on the run. I guess he's trying to catch an NFL game in the meantime. Board-certified internal medicine specialist, and also the book When Heads Come Together, the inventor of the Q collar. Ladies and gentlemen, the multi-talented Dr. David Smith. Dr. David, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm going to enjoy this, I can tell.
Well, it's great to have you on board, Dr. David. And you're a board-certified internal medicine specialist, recognized as a visiting scientist at numerous sports medicine and neurological institutes around the country. And you might have seen him at some NFL games as well, too, which he also created the Q collar, which has proven to reduce the incidence of traumatic brain injury, or TBI, in sports like the NFL, combat, and just about everything else. He also pioneered the slosh theory, explaining nature's highly G-tolerant creatures, tolerating headbutting incidents like woodpeckers, rams, and just about every animal you can imagine. And his new book, When Heads Come Together, shines a light on the journey to basically overcome the very scientific mysteries, including TBI, saving contact sports, and saving the brains in combat fighting as well, too. Also, the inventor of the Q collar. And before getting all that, Dr. David, tell us how you first got started.
Well, you're right. I started out in the world of internal medicine, and we're kind of known as internists as sort of the detectives of the medical world. And I actually had a background in chemistry with an underlying featuring in physics and math. And so I actually was a competitive swimmer my whole life. And as a lifeguard, saved a double drowning. And all these beautiful young moms came running around me, wanting to thank me and hug me. And I knew that very minute I was going to become a doctor and start saving lives if I could, because that was intense for me. So I made a big jump, and I started going into the pre-medical world, and then went on to medical school at University of Cincinnati, and then I graduated there and went up to Case Western Reserve up in Cleveland. If you know anything about that, that's kind of a juggernaut also in the engineering world. It's more or less an Ivy League of the Midwest, and it's very prestigious. I was very thrilled to be able to go through that program. And when I came out, I had an entrepreneurial background. I actually acquired the assets from Pfizer to make advanced wound dressings. So I had a pilot plant and had intellectual property, and started making my name out there for making smart dressings instead of just dumb commodity type wound dressings. And out on the radar of a company called Materials Modification Inc. They're part of the military industrial complex, a lot of PhDs, and they were struggling getting products to market. And so they brought me on, and I was standing in front of the Army Research Lab and presenting the ideas and concepts that I'd come up with to try to further this. And when I got done, the project coordinator walks up to me, puts his arm around my shoulder. That was very unusual, and says, "Damn, Doc, clever stuff. That we're not wanting you to solve bleeding out on the battlefield, but I'm really frustrated that we've got hundreds and billions of dollars into traumatic brain injury in 100 years, and we've struggled to even move the needle in traumatic brain injury. Why don't clever people solve this traumatic brain injury problem. And one of the PhDs in the room says, I think if somebody could figure out how a woodpecker can smack its head into a tree 80 million times.
If Woody can do it, so can anybody. So
But that's exactly right. When you came to me as a medical doctor, I have no idea if I'm going to be able to have an answer, or even if there is an answer. But we knew that nature had figured out how head ramming sheep can blast at 500 Gs, and giraffes also crush heads at 500 Gs, and peregrine falcons dive at 220 miles an hour and pull up at the last second. How do they do that? You and I pass out at 6 Gs, and those birds are at 50 to 60 Gs.
oh man. Oh, I'm getting some pains on that, thinking about the whole thing. It's like, I'm just glad not hitting myself against walls. It's like, why can't we do that? So
well, you're absolutely right. I started about 4 or 5 months later, I started to come up with what's called now slosh theory. And it's this realization of energy as it imparts into structures. There's a way that the body can allow that energy pass right through. And so, believe it or not, I've talked to different ranking military and generals, et cetera, and I had to convince them that we could take the forces of an IED explosion and pass them right through the brain. And of course, I think they thought I was smoking something. But I don't think they're thinking that anymore, because we partnered with the Army the last couple of years, and we are very proud to be a part of every facet of the Army Rangers. We have 122 soldiers that are in Fort Benning this week at the or I should say the national competition for Army Rangers, and every one of them has a Q collar. Every single.
That is so amazing. And of course, the Q collar is now being featured on mostly NFL players. What is it, like 40 NFL players right now, and still growing?
Yeah, we actually got the FDA approval in February of 2021 because it's an FDA medical device. We had to actually clear all of our marketing campaigns and commercials with the FDA. And so it took a little while. And we basically did a full launch here in the United States in the beginning of the 2022 season. And you are spot on. We had 40 NFL players in our very first season. We had 8 in the playoffs.
Wow.
You should have watched Tony Pollard and Dalton Schultz play in the playoffs. And then Boston Scott used it in the Super Bowl. So I got to watch my baby actually playing in the Super Bowl.
First player in NFL history to wear the Q collar, and you don't need to spend billions and billions and billions of dollars in advertising. You just put it on, and people want to know what it is, and they will run and buy. You didn't need to spend like $1 billion in Super Bowl advertising to do that.
Well, it wasn't a small amount of money to get there. So it took us 15 years to develop 25 different publications with the likes of Cincinnati Children's, the Mayo Clinic, Harvard, University of Toronto, West Virginia University, University of Chicago, North Shores. I mean, these are massive teaching institutions, and you can laugh at the fact that the inspiration of this came from a woodpecker. I don't know how hard you're going to be able to laugh when you realize the kind of research that went into this, about $19 million to date. So it's been quite an ordeal. We could have gone after just an end point of concussion, but we went way further. We went for actual objective data of damage within the brains of these different animal studies first, and then on to humans. So it's pretty remarkable that the effort that went into it, and all the failures and all the pitfalls and the ups and the downs. And I tried to chronicle that in that book.
Mm-hmm. And of course, it also says that TBI also causes more pain and suffering than just about everything. Well, all like cancer, heart attacks, strokes, and the list goes on and on and on about TBI.
Yeah, you'd be hard pressed to not find somebody that's been touched negatively by traumatic brain injury. And that quote you just made came from Daniel Spate. He's a physician out of Arizona, and on a podcast, he made that statement. I actually fact checked him, and it's true that because the people that tend to suffer a traumatic brain injury tend to be younger and not die of their disease, that fact invoke more pain and suffering and cost than all cancer, all strokes, and all heart attacks. It is a huge problem.
And you also say involving the young people, like with TBI, was this involving contact sports like football, soccer, and even especially hockey too, and the like? And of course, soccer, there's a lot of head butting too. It's like, soccer balls can make you like, good God, 100 miles an hour. Hockey pucks, flying about 100, not just head off the mask, break your nose, break your jaw, lose like several teeth, but also coming right at the head too. So.
Well, I'm actually really proud to tell you that we are actually endorsed by the Premier Lacrosse League. We just got a beautiful endorsement from the Downhill Bobsled International Bobsled and Skeleton Organization. So that was our first international endorsement. It was stunning to hear the story. I wasn't there, so full disclosure, but I was told that the first person that went down that bobsled would end up getting what they call is a hangover, and they would get ringing in their ears, they would get nausea, confusion, they'd be tired for hours, and the very first person that wore the Q collar had nothing, no complaints at all.
Wow.
And the next guy, like, well, wait a minute, let me have that thing, so then they go down that ice channel and banging their heads all the way down, nothing, not a complaint in any way, shape, or form. And I was told that we sold it to the entire national team within a matter of hours to days. It was just incredible.
Oh my God. And plus with that research as well, too, that it not just, promise to reverse brain injury. There's also some other things, like treating sleep apnea, altitude illness, and, quite a few others. So basically it's just, Q collars, everything else, doesn't protect the head and neck, also has some other benefits.
Well, let me correct you if I might. There's a second technology, that's Act 2. That's where I spent the day down in Tampa, Florida on. And Act 2 is a way of actually reversing brain injury. It is not the Q collar, but it is a phenomenal adjunct to it. And that technology has already demonstrated the ability to block sleep apnea. It also has done wonders against altitude illness. That has some really great promise. And the market size is probably 20 times bigger than the Q collar size. So we're really excited and we're geared up. I'm the science guy. So once we pass this off to the development people and the sales folks, they don't need me. So I got to try to keep myself useful over here. And we ended up coming up with something even bigger.
Mm-hmm. And of course, bigger indeed as well, too. We'll talk more about the Q collar as well, too, and the book When Heads Come Together with Dr. David Smith. But first, you listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Looking at a professional website without breaking your budget, Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition rate. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give an official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you'll love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. It takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is illusion and those you love will be the first go missing. It's available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has garnered great reviews, and Eve 11 enjoys by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassie, Forbes Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today for It Goes Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com or 40 podcast platforms. Heard in 100 countries, including Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also, Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Audible, Apple Music. Also on Podbean, Buzzsprout, Pandora, and TuneIn. Also heard on BitChute, Rumble, and subscribe to the YouTube channel along with BitChute and Rumble, and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and Facebook as well. Make sure you take us with you on any mobile device. And for great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. T-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies. Makes great gifts 24/7. Go to Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas like T-shirts, pop sockets, hoodies, phone cases, and more. Also great books like Missing, Once, and Wrinkles. Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia. Check it out today. And support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. We're here, board-certified internal medicine specialist and the author of When Heads Come Together and the inventor of the Q collar, Dr. David Smith, here on the Mike Wagner Show. We talked about how the Q collar came about and the slosh theory and studying various animals and head ramming, head butting, and how this all came together, and more about the Q collar. Of course, you just wrap around your neck, and a bit more about it. What are some of the materials that you make of the Q collar, like with the fibers of plastic and what filled and everything else, and I guess you kind of expect to be comfy. And what can a person expect to put on a cue card? Like it's a fabric or what's it made of?
Well, yeah, the development was literally years. We had close to 70 different iterations and getting this thing through market and getting it as comfortable as we possibly can. We've had engineers of every ilk, industrial engineers, mechanical engineers. We really, really had an incredible team. The design team was out of the Columbus area called Priority Designs. And
Mhm.
believe it or not, the industrial designer actually was the illustrator of my book. So
Wow.
Sherry Jones wrote and did the artwork at my behest to try to mimic the workbook of Leonardo da Vinci. So if you go through and see some of the artwork she's done, it really does look like Leonardo's hand having done that. But she was incredible, an interesting story with her. The very first day I met, I walk in the door and they greet you with two dogs. And I'm like, I'm a wonderful dog lover, right? And we sit down to the table, and I'll be darned if one of her dogs doesn't walk over and urinate all over my suitcase because I have dogs, right? And so probably just doing their territorial thing, and they were horrified. And I'm like, no, that's just a wonderful gift to me. The urine doesn't bother me in the least, but they turned around and bought me a whole new bag. And Sherry and I were bonded that very, very day, and to this day, we're great friends.
Wow, that is so amazing. And of course, with the cue collar as well, too. Does it come in one size adjustable, or do you have like the children, youth, adults, and everything like that?
So the way the device works is to mimic what you do when you merely yawn. So a lot of people didn't know that when we yawn, we actually open our mouth widely and we do not pass air in and out of our mouth. And then we raise our arms up over our head called pandiculation. This literally occludes your jugulars in 4 different places. And that's what I identified was going on with the woodpecker. The woodpecker's got the most amazing tongue you have ever seen. The tongue starts on the top of the beak, goes up, separates, goes back around the back of the skull, comes and attaches to both jugular vascular regions in the neck, and then
Wow.
reattaches and goes in and out with every blow. And you've got to figure out what the heck's going on here. I mean, why would nature do that? And so the other thing that we identified is that woodpeckers are cavity nesting birds. And so these mama birds are throwing the baby birds in a hole without air conditioning, and the oxygen level's not 21% anymore. It's down at 16. And the carbon dioxide level's no longer at 0.04. It's way up at 6% CO2, 125 times its normal. Well, the reasoning for this is when you compress the jugulars, you cause a backfilling into the cranial space of about a grape. So about 4 milliliters of dilation of the veins. Now the brain can't move. And the CO2 is the number one determinant of intracranial volume and pressure. And it also causes a rise in volume and pressure. And this basically enables a bubble wrap or like an airbag in your car. The forces don't stay absorbed. So even if you're in a car accident and your airbags go off and your seatbelts are on, the energy of that impact, 70 miles an hour, goes through you instead of being absorbed.
Hmm.
That's the physics principles. And I shamelessly stole the word slosh from NASA because NASA started using the word slosh whenever liquid rocket fuel boosters would go up into outer space. They would start to dissipate that liquid rocket fuel. Energy would be absorbed because now that fuel splashing all over the place. And one catastrophe after another started to develop until they created solid rocket fuel boosters. And so
Hmm.
I that same physiological and nomenclature and called it brain slosh and slosh theory. And I met up with this Dr. Julian Bales, who is just bigger than life. He was the NFL Players Association representative, and he was testifying to Congress on concussions back in 2007.
Hmm.
And I literally punched the guy next to me. And I said, "Oh my God, I think that guy needs to meet me." And I was just kidding,
Or
right?
this to him. Come on. Hello. Hello.
Well, the very next day, I decided, I really do think he needs to meet me. I mean, Julian Bales was in the movie Concussion. Alec Baldwin played Julian Bales in that movie in 2015. And this is the one where Will Smith played Ben Amalu. And so believe it or not, they used a lot of my props that help people understand what this physiology is. And I got to sign away my name to allow them the right to use my props. You'll see a big woodpecker sitting on, Julian Bales, AKA Alec Baldwin's desk during so it's been a great ride. There are lots of crazy stories in the book. Julian Bales wrote the foreword of the book. Very wonderful man and unbelievably brilliant clinician. So it's really got some impressive people that we've been able to work with.
And we'll talk more about the book when heads come together, and when you thought about having the impact and everything. I kind of like to buy one when it comes to driving, so you can prevent the accidents and everything else. Or it's like sometimes you wonder who really needs airbags when you got the Q collar.
Yeah, it's actually been tested, tried and true in NASCAR. They struggled a little bit thinking it might be performance enhancing, so they discontinued the use of it. I don't know this for sure. Don't hold me to this, but my understanding is they may be having second thoughts. I mean, they talked to our company and said, "Hey, you're going to have to do this $500,000 study to prove that you're not performance enhancing." But we know damn well we're performance enhancing. So why would we spend money to actually prove something that we already know we are? So that became a problem for us, and we were not able to go forward more formally with the NASCAR folks. But that could always come back around.
And what about the other sports as well, too, that we haven't mentioned? I think we covered a little bit about hockey, soccer, maybe a little basketball. How about some of the other sports, especially the Olympic sports? What's been used in that, and what's going to be in the works on that?
So it's been in the Olympics. So one of the half pipe skiers, she actually was on the British team, I believe, had 2 or 3 massive brain injuries, concussions prior. So she ended up using the Q collar. We also have Luke Kuechly was actually the first NFL player to utilize this in the NFL. At a high school level, it was my son. So my son was the first one that looked at me, and I said, "Geez, Zachary, our data's coming back. You can't take this collar off." And he says, "Dad, no problem. I'm a middle linebacker. I'm more alert. I have this strange improved sensation of spatial awareness around me, and we're actually starting to study that." And I patented it for that because we mimic a yawn. And if you fear this collar, I want to remind you, all we do is the exact same physiology that occurs when you yawn. It's just that if you start yawning on a football field, you're going to be benched. And if you start yawning out on a military field, you're in huge trouble as well.
Oh my goodness.
Taking that slosh out of the brain when any of these dangerous impacts are coming your way. And you're right, it's met a lot of different sports. My understanding, we're starting to identify Major League Baseball. When you're wearing a batting helmet, helmets are beautiful things. They absolutely help to prevent you from having a actual skull fracture, but they can't stop the movement of the brain inside the skull. And so that's going to always be a complex problem for a helmet. So we believe that this would be used in congruence with, in fact, a batting helmet of sorts. And if we can improve spatial awareness and reaction time, which is not something that we're allowed to claim at this time, no data has been submitted to the FDA, but we've had about 100 professional athletes that swear by the fact that they just play better. And a point in fact, you would love to go look up the career of Michael Pratt down in Tulane. He's a beautifully talented quarterback, and he did wonders in 2021. Don't get me wrong. But when he put the Q collar on after having a concussion, you got to go look at that man's career. It's just crazy. I think they ended up being ranked 7th, and they've never been ranked before.
Really? Wow.
It's a wonderful thing to watch him back in the pocket with the confidence that he's got now. And it's just a sight to see this gentleman play.
Oh my gosh. You know what? It made me think of that quarterback from Miami, Tua Tagliova. It's like, whoever it is, like 5 concussions, 2 years or whatever it is. And make sure Joe Burrow from your beloved.
Yep. It's unbelievable stuff. So we think it's probably one of the most versatile sporting gear. It's a medical device. I don't want to just call it another piece of equipment, but it literally has the ability to do so many different things. If I could quickly go back to Sherry Jones, who is my industrial designer, she read one of my white papers that I had theoretically said that it also volumizes your inner ear. So I said it will block the energy entering your inner ear, and it could actually dramatically improve your risk for hearing loss. And if you look at the military and the veterans organization, the number one cost to the US military is hearing aids, because they're always around these guns and weaponry and loud noises. And so she goes, hey, I'm actually the sound engineer for my husband's heavy metal band. And I get this horrible hangover with ringing in my ears, and I wake up the next day and I'm tired and I've got a headache. It goes on for hours. Can I try one of these prototypes? And I said, well, of course you can. And oh my God, woke me up the next morning giggling. She's like, I can't believe it. I feel great. I have absolutely no hangover in any way, shape, or form. And so think what that will do on concerts and young kids going and not becoming deaf, or musicians being able to play at loud concerts now and not fearing damage to their ears. And it doesn't change your perception of sound and the octaves that you're able to create.
That
Well, unfortunately, I have lost your sound, Mike.
Oh, you know something? I think somebody's trying to get me a Q collar. Now we got it here too. So
Okay, now you've come back. I hear you now. Sorry.
okay, we got that right. So we'll talk about when heads come together with Dr. David Smith. You listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios, and brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson's They Are Missing. We'll be back with you, multi-talented Dr. David Smith of When Head Comes Together and the Adventure of the Q collar after this time out. We're back with the inventor of the Q collar here on the Mike Wagner Show. Let's talk more about the book, When Heads Come Together. Your book shines a light basically on the journey to overcome the various scientific mysteries, including TBI, which we have discussed, saving contact sports and saving the brains of combat fighters. And a bit more about the book. And once again, let's recap. What was a precise moment that exactly inspired you to write the book, When Heads Come Together?
Well, that goes back to that Army research lab that I was standing there, and somebody actually threw the gauntlet down and said, someone's got to figure out how these creatures can do it. And I am huge into looking to nature first. As an inventor, you have to actually embrace failure. We use that. We turn left or we turn right. We find a way to get around whatever obstacle that we have. Well, nature, through natural selection, has done this for 20 million years. And if you, again, are concerned about this jugular compression with this muscle that this animal has called the omohyoid, I'm here to tell you, all of us have that muscle in our necks, and mankind did not know why it was there. So
Interesting.
like a physiology that no one knew was there, but the kind of the cool and sexy and clever thing is we took advantage of that, and we were able to actually find a way to implicate that into traumatic brain injury potential and repetitive head impact scenario. So it's been fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun as well, too. And of course, more about TBI as well. And of course, it causes more pain and suffering, all the cancer, heart attacks, and strokes, and everything else. And besides curbing the TBI when it comes to Q collar, what else can it curb as well?
Well, I would encourage you to pop onto my website. It's davidsmithmd.com. And on there, you can access not only all of our research, but all of the patents, all of the work that's done. There's lots of videos on there to help explain the physiology and the medicine behind that. And so that's where you're going to kind of get a compendium, if you will, of all these cool different things. It goes chapter by chapter and all the different aspects of what we believe it can do today. But I'm going to be honest with you, we're learning more about it in every single year. So we continue to find these really cool things. I had a guy that was an anesthesiologist from the Milwaukee area, and he contacted me one day and he got me on the phone. He goes, "Oh, Dr. Dave, I'm so glad to meet you. I read one of your articles And I've got a condition called POTS. I have postural orthostatic tachycardic syndrome. So every time he stands up, this gentleman's blood flow leaves his brain. He gets lightheaded, passes out frequently, may get nauseous, throw up, and then be exhausted for hours. He was on experimental medications. I mean, the man was miserable, and he called me because he said, I have a rubber band from my wife's kitchen around my neck after
No.
please tell me your Q collar is safer than that rubber band. And of course, I said, yes, you're going to love the amount of research that went into all of this. And so we now have had 5 patients with POTS get dramatic benefits. Now, we can't claim those benefits. The FDA has not analyzed any of this. It's not been done in a study format, but these are just anecdotal stories where people are coming back just stunned and amazed. And I'm going to say this again, it's as safe as a yawn. And if you think about it, when you lie down for 8 hours every night, the volume goes up in your cranial space and the pressure goes up in your cranial space higher than our Q collar creates. So if you feel that in some way, shape, or form, this is somehow a scary thing, even though it's got FDA approval for safe, and I would encourage you to never lie down again, because that actually imparts a more heavy physiology on you than even the Q collar does.
Wow, that is interesting. And once again, where can we find the book, and where can we find the Q collar at?
So it's anywhere books are sold, literally. So if you go to Barnes and Noble or Amazon and you search for it, they will find it, and you can get it that way. You can come to my website, which is David Smith, MD. We link you over to the Q collar. The Q collar people have done a beautiful job on their webpage, and you'll be very excited to read all the things and all the ambassadors. So you're seeing just one professional athlete after another. A fun story in Cincinnati that we had a brand new stadium there called TQL, and we were there watching the New England Revolution play our football team. And out on the field was the first first professional soccer player to wear a Q collar, and his name was Omar Gonzalez. And
Nice.
buddies go running down towards the field, holding up the Q collar that I had brought with me and pointing at it. And Omar points at his neck and says, yeah, yeah. And he goes, the inventor's up here in the stands. Come meet him. He came running all the way up into the stands, and he was just so glowingly ecstatic about it. It just did my heart so much good to see that it's been so widely accepted so quickly.
And it's better than a goal.
I know. So,
Oh my gosh, that's such a great story. We're here with Dr. David Smith, the inventor of the Q collar, and when the heads come together here on the Mike Widener Show, just a few more things. We'd love to have you back, Dr. Dave. Talk about Act 2. And speaking of Act 2, what else can we expect from you in 2023 and beyond, Dr. Dave?
So remember, I'd mentioned that there was more than one physiological discovery. The Q collar was the compression side, but also the CO2 breathing and rebreathing. And it turns out that head ramming sheep rebreathe their own carbon dioxide, that giraffes rebreathe their own carbon dioxide, and it gives them that ability to create these unbelievable blows as well. So we started going down that pathway, and we created a rebreather. We call it the Sage rebreather. It's not ready for prime time. It probably got at least 18 months to go to get it through the FDA for claims. But what we've already identified is just mind-blowing. We ended up reversing brain injury in a 28-year-old traumatic brain injury patient at University of Cincinnati. Dr. Jed Hardings is one of the world's leading authority on how brains die. And he started coming to my talks, and so we became friends, and I read everything he ever wrote, and I started learning more about these spreading depolarizations. Well, I have a chemistry background, so I dove into his technology, and I came to him one day and I said, I don't know how carbon dioxide raising it won't change that cascade of events that occurs after a brain injury. And sure enough, this poor gentleman was in the intensive care unit, and he reached the legal diagnosis of brain death. And as the doctors were going out into the waiting room to tell the family that their loved one had died and they needed to take him off the ventilator, Jed says, guys, wait a minute. Don't you remember Dr. Smith's lecture? He just was here 30 days ago. Let's try upping that CO2 to head ramming sheep level that he was talking about. And within 4 hours, the spreading depolarizations disappeared, and the next day he woke up.
Wow.
Jed got a $4 million grant from the Department of Defense to study this type of a way of reversing brain death. And that's where we think that I would like that to be an epitaph on my grave someday, is if we could actually reverse this damage. It's probably going to have to be reversed early on in the course of it. You know, you're not going to be able to come a year later and reverse it. But boy, you could go in the locker room and start invoking this physiology is what we're hoping to see.
Mm-hmm. And I'll bet you Joe Burrow is going to lead the charge on that one.
There you go.
If they play Kansas City, maybe put some head into knock some sense into Patrick Mahomes too. It's like if they can do that, that'd be great rivalries. Thanks to Q Collar. So,
well, I certainly think this should be standard a standard of care for all equipment, and it should be just a standard piece of equipment for everybody at some point in time. We've had over 1 million head impacts studied, and we don't have any unusual occurrences. 1 million head impacts,
mm-hmm.
and not just anecdotal, just these are all videotaped. They all have accelerometers behind their ears, and all of these impacts have been heavily studied by some of the best research organizations in the world, and we're not finding any negative consequence. So we hope and continue as more and more. We have 10,000 collars out there protecting high school and collegiate heads right now. And as I mentioned, the military has just gone wonderfully off the rails with this. I'm so proud to tell you.
That is so interesting. We'd love to have you back for Act 2 and more and everything, Dr. David Smith. And who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
You know, I probably have to tell you it's Julian Bales. The man is just a brilliant researcher and neurosurgeon. He's bigger than life. And when he started to realize what I was telling him, he kind of gave me that first chance to convince him. In the movie Concussion with Bennett Omalu, he did the same thing for Bennett Omalu. And he had the reputation of the entire NFL and the world behind him. And when Julian Bales started to go, you know, Dave, I think you've got something here, you know, and we ended up formulating a plan and negotiating how our organization, we partnered with West Virginia University, and they agreed to give us some seed money and do our patent work. All I had to do was I had to prevent up to 2% of brain injury, since there's nothing that's ever shown him 2%. And we blocked 83%. He called me at 2:30 in the middle of the night, and he sounded like a little schoolgirl. He was so excited. Dave, this is 83%. Do you know what this means? And of course, I did know what it meant. And it's all been history. It's all she wrote.
That is so amazing. I wouldn't mind getting phone calls like that at 2:30 in the morning, especially great news. Oh, my goodness. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
Well, I strongly encourage people to please just look into this technology. It is just so life-giving. And if you've ever had a concussion, you know how scary that can be. And there's no guarantee that it's much worse than just a concussion, which tends to not, that people thought didn't lead to anything chronic. Some of our early research with Harvard investigators in jugular compression, we actually did block some of the findings that are seen in chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, which of course is what scares all the professional athletes right now. So these gentlemen and ladies that are in the professional sports, they make a living at this. And if they start getting brain injuries, they can't make a living. So if this can just extend their careers without injuring their brains, that's why I'm doing all this. I gave up a very lucrative medical practice to chase this dream. And I tell you, I have never looked back. I love what I do.
And I'm sure the NFL, the sports world, and everyone else will thank you and love you for it too. And I'm so impressed. I'm ready to get a Q call right now. I just have to get permission from my wife to get one by credit card. More on that.
That sounds great. Well, next time we meet up, I'd be more than thrilled to sign the book for you as well. So
we'll certainly do so. We're here at Dr. Thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Learned a lot from you. Looking forward to having you again soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. How do people contact you? Where can people purchase or check out your books and check out your works?
Yeah, and encourage you to go either to qcollar.com or Dr. David, or I should say davidsmithmd.com, and they link to each other as well in many ways. And you can learn all about this technology at those two sites. And you can buy the book at literally anywhere books are sold.
We will certainly check that out. Once again, Dr. Dave, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Learned a lot. Looking forward to having you again soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Live after back. Wish you all the best. And Dr. David, you've got a great future ahead of you.
Thank you.